Start the recording. And welcome everybody to our November version of Texas Leadership Network. I'm so glad that you've all joined us today. We have an exciting topic about communication. For those of you who have not been to a mastermind session before, it really is about collaboration. So we're going to present a short topic, and then we're going to open it up to have a discussion about the topic at hand, and oh, by the way, if you don't want to participate, we're probably going to call on you. So just get ready. That's what the mastermind is all about, right, Cortland?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So great to see you. Got a long list. We had 20 people that signed up for this today, so it's very exciting. All right, Dennis, I believe that I have laid out the rules of the road. There are no dumb questions. There are no dumb comments. We're all kind to each other and taking all of the information and sharing with each other. We do have quite a few coaches on today. Maybe should we, Bill, you're new with us this week, so let's do just a quick introduction. So my friend Bill is also a Texas coach. So Bill, welcome. I hope that you were able to get a break between the last call.
Yes, very brief.
Yeah, bam, just like that. So Bill, if you would introduce yourself to the group, that'd be great.
Sure. I'm a focal point business coach. I live in the Plano, Texas area. I work with businesses that are manufacturers, I guess I call them specialty manufacturers of medical devices and lighting technologies, water treatment, and specialty services, all business to business companies. 20 to $50 million size range would be typical for me.
Awesome. Bill, welcome to the party. I think we're going to have a really great, lively conversation today. I think you probably know all of the other coaches here, but let's introduce Greg. Would you introduce yourself, please, sir?
Yes, ma'am. Greg Alt with Paramount Services. We are a fractional CFO services firm that also provides bookkeeping and payroll services for small to medium-sized businesses, not mainly in Houston, but service clients nationwide.
Thank you, Greg. It's great to see you. Cortland, would you please introduce yourself, sir?
Sure. Cortland Emmel, CEO of Pseudocol Labs. We are a CR FBMO in Dallas. We provide services to a number of firms, and Bill, we are heavily into the device industry as well as the drug industry. I do have ex-FDA on staff, so we're here to help. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Cortland. All right, Dennis, I'm going to turn it over to you did I already give you a screen share?
You sure did. Yep.
I did. All right, awesome. So Dennis, it is all yours. Kick us off.
All right. So I am going to share a couple of slides. There are only 4 of them. And the intent of the slides and the story is to kind of get our brains primed around communications. So bear with me for the story, bear with me for the slides, and then we'll kick off the lively discussion immediately after. So let's start. So the topic today is communicating for effectiveness, and I'm going to present one tidbit around the law of self-control from Brian Tracy. But let's start with the story. So do we all remember the February freeze? Everyone remembers the February freeze. It's near and dear to all of our hearts in Texas. It doesn't happen often, but it did. So I don't know if everyone knows, but we sold our house and moved out to the country in the middle of nowhere just before the freeze. We were in this brand new place that we had no experience, didn't know where the pipes were, didn't know where the shutoff valves were, didn't know how well the heat worked, and the freeze hit. And so there we were with no power in the middle of the freeze, and the nearest gas station that had gas to keep the generators running, to at least give us a little bit of warmth, was, well, it was 37 minutes away. And so I felt like I was in the Thunderdome, like a Mad Max movie. I get up, I jump in the Jeep, and they were limiting rationing the gas to 10 gallons per person. And so it was a gamble. You had to think, well, gee, do I drive the 37 miles and risk not being, the gas station not having gas? Or do I siphon out of the Jeep and take the risk the next day? So it was a back and forth thing. And what you can imagine is because of that, the supply and demand, gas stations being closed, there were lines. There were very long lines. And I don't know how many of you experienced the long lines, but out where we were in the middle of the country, you drive 37 minutes to the nearest gas station and you're sitting in this line and you're sitting in it for a while, hoping that there's still some gas when you get there. You're hoping that the power stays on. And so it was a trying time, but we made it through. But the other piece to this story was the experience that I had on day 3. So I had driven, the lines were getting longer and longer and longer. We were seeing fuel, fewer and fewer gas stations had gas. And so it was kind of tense, but we're all patiently waiting in line. And I was one person away from next. There was someone in front of me, they were next, and I was the person after. And here he comes. Here he comes. The man in the brand new shiny Stingray Corvette with dealer plates on it comes speeding into the parking lot and cuts in front of the person in front of me. And he jumps out and goes inside. What the hell? What is this guy doing? What makes him think that he's so special? Like, he doesn't have a credit card. He has to go inside. So not only did he cut in front of people, not only is he blocking the gas pump, but he's going to go inside and he's going to go pay cash or whatever it is that he's doing. Holy crap, right? What goes through your head at this point? Like, what would be going through your mind? What would, just talk to me a little bit about how would you respond or what's going through your head right at this very moment?
That is an awesome car, but you don't belong in line.
I'd be thinking that car's going to be terrible in the snow.
Somebody who thinks they're very overprivileged and thinks the world revolves around them.
Yeah.
I have a more colorful phrase, but I'll rephrase from using that.
Yeah, we're recording this. We're recording this, Greg.
I'll just say I grew up in the Panhandle. It's called a shotgun.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. I had somebody in another forum when I told this story, said, I would, and this is a very unassuming woman. It was very out of character. She said, I'd slash his tires. Like, she was pissed. Right now, what if I told you though that the man wasn't there to get gas? What if I told you the reason he came speeding into that parking lot and parked where he parked and ran in was because there was a family in a van. They were sleeping in the van. That family needed gas just like anyone else, and they were on their way to the gas station. But what happened was, on the way to the gas station, that van slipped on some ice, fell into a ditch, and was upside down. They were trapped. And his cell phone was out of batteries because he too was struggling with the power outage. He was there to ask for help. That changes your perspective, right? Changes it a little bit. You go from anger, frustration, confrontation, potentially, what do you do? What action do you take? You go from that to, oh my gosh, this guy's doing the right thing. It's a massive swing in emotion. It's a massive swing in the way you deal with the issue at hand or the situation at hand, because we really don't know. So let's talk for a second. Let me pivot for a minute to the law of self-control. So the law of self-control tells us that our thoughts and our experiences, those things that are going through our head, drive our beliefs. Those beliefs drive our actions, and those actions ultimately drive our results, right? The reaction that we had hearing that story, slash the tires, get a shotgun, this person is overprivileged, I've got some colorful adjectives. Those aren't wrong. They're not wrong, they're not right. They're just based on our thoughts and our experiences. My experience with overprivileged, stingray driving jerks, they are what they are. And I carry those filters with me every day. I can't control what goes through my head, but I can control what comes out of my mouth, right? But those thoughts and those experiences drive those beliefs, which ultimately could drive the actions, positive or negative, right? And here's the deal. We look for evidence. We look for evidence to prove that our beliefs are correct. They're not right, they're not wrong, they just are. And we're looking for evidence. We're constantly looking for evidence to prove that what we believe is correct based on our thoughts and based on our experiences. So the question becomes, as we go into the end of the year and we talk about communicating for effectiveness, we have to consciously ask the question, what are we showing through our actions? What are we showing to our teams? What are we showing to our suppliers? It's our actions that people see. They don't see the thoughts, they don't see the beliefs, they don't see the experiences, but what they see is the action, right? So who are you being? Who are you being as a leader? Who are you being to your team? Are we leading by example? If we are, we have to be the change that we want to happen. When we're setting goals, when we're giving direction, we need to be that change that we want to happen. It goes far beyond words, right? It's our actions. We have to have integrity, being honest, transparent, altruistic, putting the needs of others above the needs of ourselves. Being enthusiastic. People follow people who excite them. Going beyond the words, right? People don't get excited because words are written on paper. People don't get excited because they hear words coming out of someone else's mouth. It's that additional action that couples with the words and being enthusiastic, right? Simply smiling and say, this is fun. No one believes that, right? You have to get out there and excite people and be genuinely enthusiastic and communicate. Communicate, genuinely be interested and ask questions. Because vision without execution, vision without action is simply a hallucination. That's all it is, right? And again, we can't control those thoughts and experiences. We can change our experiences. We can vary our experiences, which may then drive different thoughts, which may then drive different beliefs. But as we're setting goals, and as we're communicating with our teams, ask yourself, who are you being? So I'm going to kill the screen share so that we can see everybody. But there's the topic. Who are we being? Who are we being when with our teams? Who are we being with our suppliers? And when we're setting goals, who should we be? So I'll pause there and just open the floor. Let's have a conversation about who we're being and how we're communicating. Anyone want to start?
Start, Dennis.
Go ahead, Troy.
You know, I was just thinking as you were walking through that, you know, I'm recently working with one of my clients on values, personal values. And personal values are really our behaviors in action. So I love what you said is that, you know, the other thing that came to mind when you were telling the story is you don't really know what the other person's going through until you've walked in their shoes. Well, you can't walk in their shoes, but you can ask a lot of questions to understand where they're coming from, what they're about, what their values are, and what they're made of. And then your whole perception may change completely, but it's all about communication. Thank you for sharing that.
Sorry, come off mute, Austin.
Yeah, so yeah, this one is really making me think. I just came out of a session earlier this week, had 15 leaders in it, and we went through some of the very things that you spoke about. This is probably the first time that as a group they had gone through anything leadership training wise. And so there's a book that I refer people to. It's called The Leadership Challenge. In fact, the guys that wrote it, they teach in the Google Leadership Development Program and that sort of thing. But it hits on several of the things that you mentioned, Dennis. Because my starting point is always, I think leadership is too important a skill to be reserved for the corner office. I think it all starts with personal leadership, and then we must all, as individuals, endeavor to be leaders. And so the things that they talk about, very similar to what you talked about, is leading by example, having a clear vision of where we want to go, celebrating success, challenging the process, do something different, so on and so forth. So I love this conversation, and then how we took it into value, and we took this conversation around values. And we did an exercise/workshop on that as well. So throughout the day, it was interesting to see how people change/evolve, because even between us guys and gals, this is us. When I was setting this session up, it was the person that hired me, the boss. Hey, no, he didn't want to do anything on communication. Oh, no, we're great communicators. We do a fine job, right? And so I said, hey, look, there's always an opportunity to get better. And so as we went through the day's events, he was taking the most notes. And his neck has got to be sore because it was bobbing so much. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. Well, and what you were saying brought to the surface for me another little phrase or snippet. We should be producing, as a leader, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, we should be producing more leaders than followers. That's how you scale. That's how you scale a business, right? By producing more leaders than you produce followers. And so, if you're walking into the office or you're joining that morning Zoom call, and everyone's looking at who you're being, and if what you are being is not consistent with the values, if who you're being is not consistent with the goals, if who you're being is not consistent with the vision, or what they're not seeing, they're seeing you in the role, who you're being is the technician, who you're being is the manager, you're not being the entrepreneur. That's okay, right? Maybe it's necessary, but you really do need to step out and be that visionary and show it, demonstrate it through your actions. And in that sense, then you're producing more leaders and you're producing followers.
Because I think we get lost. I think our role is, to your point, our role as leaders is not to do, it's really to teach. It's to teach and educate. And through that process, you said this is how we
I think, Trisha, you were.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, when you talk about teams, some of us don't have teams, right? We're solo. Our teams are external to our business, whether it's the vendors, the clients. I was thinking at it from more of an intrinsic position, and who am I being when no one is looking? How true am I being to myself and my business, and to Austin's point, right, about being a leader? But who am I being when no one's looking? Because that's what's real.
Yep. Yeah. How would the leader you want to become do the things that you need to do? Right. We're not all there. There's always development. Everyone has development, right? Tony Robbins has a coach. Tony Robbins has a development plan, right? Jeff Bezos has a development plan. They're living in those shoes, right? They're constantly thinking, how would the leader that I want to become do the things that I need to do? And they find a way to hold themselves accountable, but it's ultimately by taking action, right? And that law of self-control, varying those experiences. Some of the most effective leaders are the ones that do put themselves in the shoes of the workforce, put themselves in the shoes of their suppliers. Right? Eddie, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, by the way, thanks very much. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I think it was a great example for everybody as well of how powerful storytelling is, that we were all gripped wanting to know what was going to happen with the guy in the red car. And that is good, because actually, that is a wonderful thing to do to create impact, which is to tell a story, to get everybody into the subject. What I was going to say is, for me, and that's something I talk about a lot with my clients, is awareness is such an important part of being a leader. What is your impact, right? And if we're deluding ourselves about the impact we have, then that is not getting us anywhere. We've really got to understand ourselves before we can understand other people to a certain extent. And another example I'll give of that, which is slightly different, but it's sort of linked. I remember years ago that I was responsible for internal communication in a big organization, and we ran a big survey, and we got 42% response, which over 20,000 people was pretty good. And we did a lot of graphs and we did a lot of things. And I remember talking to my team, who were very, very excited about all the findings that we were gathering. And I was saying, you know what, I am excited about this, but I'm more worried about the 58% who weren't sufficiently engaged to actually answer the survey at all. Because we're completely in the dark about them. So you've just told me that 23% of people feel we communicate well, but actually it's 23% of 42. And I think that this is a kind of delusion that we can easily get ourselves into with statistics and that kind of stuff. So I thought I'd make that point, but very, very interesting, Dennis, thanks.
But on that topic of communication too, there was a great colorful analogy, in terms like on the lines of the storytelling, the picture that's painted is essentially a bus, right? So you get the leadership sitting in the front of the bus, but the further back you get, the more diluted and muted the message becomes. You sat in a bus, you don't know what the people up front are saying. And so you do have to stand up and walk to the back of the bus, or figure out that 58% that's sitting back there, not hearing, not seeing. How do you get that? How do you communicate to them? And what are you communicating when you walk in the door? Do you walk in the door and go straight to your office, not looking up, not making eye contact, not smiling, or you stop it along the way? There's something really, really powerful about just taking a pause for a moment, whether you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, or running a major company, stopping and saying, hey, I really appreciate what you do. Really appreciate what you do. I appreciate how you're contributing to the vision. Are you as enthusiastic as I am about what's to come? Right? Again, the vision without action, vision without execution is simply a hallucination. And a lot of times we do wander around in this cloud of hallucination, and then we wonder at the end of the year, why didn't we achieve our targets? Why didn't we achieve our goals? I did everything I could to make it happen, but the rest of the folks didn't participate. If only they would have participated. Well, where's their headspace? Are they viewing that Corvette as a guy that wants to help, or a person that wants to hurt? Do they view the Corvette as somebody who is taking advantage of a situation and coming in as a privileged individual, or someone who's there to make things better? The actions that you take, not necessarily the thoughts and beliefs. Don't let the thoughts and beliefs necessarily get in the way, but take time to pause and say, what am I thinking about? What thoughts are crossing my head, and why? Why do I think this? And then start asking questions. Greg, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, and that kind of goes to kind of some of the lines that, something my mom always told me, because sometimes I would jump to conclusions and speak before I thought about what was going on. And she says, when things are irritating to you like that, or something, you have that guy in the sports car cut you off, and your immediate thought is, well, that overprivileged idiot is trying to cut in front of me. But wait 10 seconds, see what evolves. And a lot of times your initial thought is corrected. And because you don't know what's going on necessarily, what you perceive, but having that, wait, she said, wait 10 seconds and see what happens. And I've carried that with me for 30 years. And a lot of things without jumping to conclusion.
I find just talking to people that some of us come from different backgrounds, and Greg, it kind of resonated with me when you were talking about that, because I know somebody like you who's here on this call who very quickly jumps to conclusions about things, where I tend to wait for things to happen. I see Sean raising his hand, right? I kind of sit in the background and I guess I've always thought about it as being very trusting, right? I trust that that person has a reason for doing X, right? So I'm sitting on the positive side of that, waiting for them to basically make me wrong, right? Where the other half of the Stetzel family immediately jumps to a conclusion. So, I think that comes from our backgrounds and the way we're raised, but it comes into communication as well, right? Even with each other. And where it took a lot of years, 30 long years, for Dennis and I to find a way to communicate well with each other. I'm kidding, but it has been 30 long years. But because we come from two different places, right? Even in that one situation, my mind doesn't go directly there. And so being able to open up the communication and say, how do you feel about that? Who am I being today? And I don't want to be considered the person who's just sitting back, not doing anything about it. I don't want to seem weak, but I communicate differently. Just a thought.
No, and that's especially in your case, Tricia and Dennis, with you two working together day in and day out. My spouse is joining my business full-time over the next 6-week period, and we are having those conversations on communication. And where I really have been running everything, and we're kind of going to segregate out some stuff, and but I'm still very much a driving force. But I have to go back to when I was in the corporate world for those 25 years, and I was a leader. I need to lead by example, but also remember that it has to be that separation between business and our personal life, and not have the two mix and it become, a business issue become a personal issue.
Mhm.
And it's all through communication.
And we deal with that internal conflict all the time, right? Every day. I'll share another story. I'm working with a client. We're going through, her and her team, on self-awareness. It's all about EQ. So self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, social regulation. And as we worked our way through the different topics, the owner of this particular business said, well, gosh, so I understand self-awareness. I understand regulation. And we were getting to the end. And she said, this all makes sense, but here's my problem. What if I become aware that I just don't care? Right? Now, this is the business owner, right? She genuinely, right, her self-awareness said, okay, I understand why I feel this way. I understand where the thoughts and experiences are coming from that are driving the beliefs. I know that I need to control those, and I'm starting to understand the triggers that drive those, right? Now, this social awareness thing, so I need to consider the thoughts and the feelings and the impact to others. But what if I become aware that I just don't genuinely care, right? Which is a tough question. But here's what it boils down to, right? What are the consequences of not caring? And what are the priorities? If the consequences are zero, you just bought yourself a whole bunch of time. Because if you don't care and there are no consequences, and it doesn't happen to fall into a priority list for you and or your business, get rid of it. That's baggage that you don't need to carry, right? But I thought it was a really interesting, it was a tough question, right? What if I become aware that I simply don't care? But I think a lot of us struggle with that, right? We know that we're supposed to respond in a certain way. We know that we should, at least, the books, the documentation, the social norms, the business norms, those relationships, they dictate to us we probably should care, but maybe we don't. But if you think
Can I piggyback on that? And I had a client basically tell me the same thing, and I responded exactly. What are you willing to live with if you're not really, you don't want to focus on the fundamentals? But she was so astute in her business department, knowledge of her business and knowledge of herself. She says, I don't care, but I know it's important. So what she did, she said, she basically called all that fluffy stuff that makes people happy and empowering. I don't have time for that. But she went out and invested in a leadership team, chief human resources officer, COO, people in that nature, so that they could run those initiatives. And then it allowed her to, be like we say, allowed her to work on the business and do the things that she believed she could bring lots of value to the firm. The things like selling and meeting with clients and creating new strategies and so on and so forth. And it worked. I mean, so she's been sort of on this path about 4 or 5 years, minimal turnover, employer of choice in a particular industry, great kudos from the client base. But she made the decision that it's important, but I want nothing to do with it. So I'm going to go find somebody who enjoys it to execute.
Yeah. Yeah. If it is a priority and there are consequences and you genuinely don't care, go find someone who does. Go find someone who does. They're going to be much more effective at it. Why? Because their thoughts and their experiences and their beliefs are going to drive their actions, and people are going to see right through that. People are going to see beyond those words.
And she'll be the first one to tell you that the things that her team is doing, she could have never gotten there because there wasn't enough, as we well know, there wasn't enough of an emotional attachment to the outcomes for her.
Exactly. Anyone have any additional?
Yeah, I want to comment on one thing that Trish said earlier when she talked about, kind of what do people catch you doing, or what do you do when nobody's looking? Yeah, I love that comment because that's my definition of integrity. It's what you do when nobody's looking. So, I remember the teaching moment for my son. We were at an event or something like that. We went into this room and there was all this swag in it, and nobody was in. It was totally unattended. And then he kind of looked at me, and I just, I went in there to either drop a note off or something, but went in and went out and just didn't even look at the swag, let alone put a few because nobody was looking, right? But I think about that often, that if I had put a few pieces because nobody was looking. What was the message that I would have been sending to my son if I had done that? Well, it's only wrong if you get caught, right? Or if somebody's looking, right? So long time ago, and he's never brought it up, but I'm sure he remembers it because I see how he leads his life.
Thank you, Austin. So Sean, any thoughts from you? You've been kind of quiet, which is uncharacteristic of you. So you're either
I'm scared. Sean's so quiet.
That's a lovely backhanded compliment there. No, I love the discussion. I think it's fairly accurate, and it amazes me how often you visit with a leader in a business or a sales team, or just someone that's a leader somewhere, and the leadership problem that they describe that's going on in their business often turns into a communication issue. Oftentimes it's not really a leadership problem. If they were able to just simply communicate the vision, you'd mentioned when you started about, are you excited about the vision as I am to someone in the business? Tom Peters talks about managing by wandering around, right? And kind of getting in touch with people. And I would venture to guess that most organizations, if you wandered around and asked people what the vision was, they know what it is than the equation for pi or something. And if it is on the wall, they might be able to spatter out a couple of those words, but it has no meaning because, to go back to Austin's point about when people are watching, someone's always watching and they see that the words are just words on the wall. It's not being lived up to. And so I think communication is huge. I think it's probably when you boil everything down, it's probably the leading factor in most organizations, most relationships, right? Is communication. I mean, think of your car. The guy pulled in there. He could have communicated a little differently when he got out, but everybody in the line could have communicated differently as well. But instead we get focused on what's important to us. And doesn't really matter, kind of like the leader, right? I really don't care. I understand it's important, but it's not important to me. And that's okay. At least they're honest enough to understand that. And if you understand that about yourself, you can deal with that. So those are my thoughts.
But yeah, and where does it fall on priority list? If it rises, if the priority, if it rises to the point of recommunicating or recasting the vision, then it sure as heck should be, on the top of the priority list. If you become aware that you don't care when you read your own vision statement, then you should probably adjust that.
Well, there's no other way leaders going to make more leaders if they don't communicate effectively and efficiently. I mean, it's just not going to happen, right? You'll have leaders, but they may not be carrying out the vision of the company. And how many business owners or people have you met that where their business is doing pretty good, but it's not fulfilling the vision they had when they started the business? Well, why is that? You have the sales team out there really doing what they think is the right thing. They're going after the clients and bringing in the business they think is what the business wants. And yeah, we're doing well, but the owner or the CEO or the leadership team's not happy because it's not really filling their vision of what they wanted when they started the business. And they get frustrated, and then they feel like, no one's listening to me. All those things you said when you started, right? No one's listening. What are they doing over there? Well, it's just communication. If we effectively communicate what we want and everybody gets on board with that from go, and doesn't that really formulate our culture as well? Those communication efforts that we understand, that is our culture, right? I mean, if I understand, if Dennis is the CEO of this group and I understand what Dennis wants, if I answer the phone, I can answer that question because I know what Dennis wants. If I don't know what Dennis wants, I go to my superior, which could be Austin or Trish, right? And then it goes up that chain until it gets to a level of someone that understands the vision enough to answer the question. And it goes all the way back down that chain to the client. So communication, I think, is just paramount to just about everything that we do in life. And, and as salespeople, and we're all salespeople here, we can't survive without it. So.
Walking the talk. Thank you, Sean. So Cortland, you knew I'd eventually come to you and ask you to come off mute and get your, I always look forward to hearing you react, respond, and share your experiences. So what are your thoughts?
Sure. Well, very interesting topic because of the fact that we were preparing for management review, and one of the topics that I wanted to share was effective communication. And you've now made me rethink my strategy because of the fact that I was using the John Maxwell effective communication as my model. And now then you're casting a new element within that I need to consider as I do this presentation so that we move forward. And I agree, one of the biggest issues I have right now is effective communication between leaders within the organization, because we're not doing what we should be doing. And because of the fact that there is a misunderstanding between the leaders. And I've got to basically work on a way to allow better communication between people, and have them understand their strengths and understand how they can communicate better to each other. And this scenario that you just gave, as I said, just kind of threw my entire plan out the window. So I'm now having to rethink.
I'm glad it provoked a level of thought that has you back to and I won't apologize for giving you that level of homework, right? That's probably a good thing.
Yeah, now Cortland's presentation is going to involve a Corvette getting beat to hell. So
yeah. And maybe another thing, you provoked a thought, Cortland, as you talked through it. And some of us on this call have heard it in a couple different forums, but we've adopted a culture because we've had to go remote, and we're coming back, and we're starting to meet in person. But our meetings, the people that we talk to, it's become very, very transactional. You start a Zoom call, you end a Zoom call, right? Much more so than when we were in person. But it's not what happens in the meeting that's important between leaders. It's what happens between the meetings. It's like a game of Survivor, right? Who's got the immunity idol when they come into that transactional Zoom call? Which alliances are built up? Who's getting voted off the island? Where are the secret votes? Those all happen in the background. And when we're all together in the office, that nonverbal communication, you could see it. You knew who was talking to who. It was more open. There were still the alliances. There were still the immunity idols. You know, the immunity idol being, hey, I talked to Cortland. I got the immunity idol. I know where his head is at. And if you try to undermine that, I'm going to slap that immunity idol because me and Cortland are on board, right? These transactional Zoom calls and this remote working, that's just it. It's transactional. So it's not necessarily the meeting that's important. It's what's happening between the meetings that's more important. And that, you know, as leaders, we need to promote, prompt, encourage, somehow, you know, communicate that we should be talking to each other outside the meetings.
Yeah, can I just add to that?
Absolutely.
So I totally agree with what you just said, everything. And more than that, one of the things that, and particularly in this new world of Zoom and everything, that I'm always encouraging people to have actual meetings set up between leaders that are about communication, that are not about the tactical stuff, are not about going through the list of the clients again, because of it's much more comfortable in some ways to go through the list of clients again and say which are the key ones and what do we need to do, and here are the action points, and okay, off you go. But actually have a conversation once a month for half an hour, which is an off the racetrack conversation. How are things going? How are you? How are we communicating? Are we aligned? And really force that. And perhaps, for example, if you've got a team of 4 or 5 people, you say, hey, we're going to have a meeting every 2 weeks for half an hour. And the subject is no subject. The subject is, how's the team? And very often those meetings then get pushed, because what happens, people say, oh, that's an interesting idea. They have one, it goes really, really well. They can see the benefit, but then next week there's a big problem with client X, so they don't do it. And actually, you know what, that's when the problems begin, because you end up just simply talking about the problems and the issues, and you start blaming each other and not really communicating. So I think it sounds as though that can be a bit of a waste of time, but actually it's the complete opposite.
Absolutely. Love it. Absolutely. Bill or Marcia, anything that either of you want to contribute? Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, it makes me think about just leadership situations in the past where I think it's sometimes a leader can be quick to make a decision if there's some issue or something comes up, and the organization might be looking for that leader to make a decision and move forward. But I always find it valuable if you step back and really think about the full implications of taking action. It is important to understand the situation, and it is the opportunity where you're demonstrating who are you being with your team. That if you're jumping in and resolving something that could be resolved by your leaders, by them communicating better, then it's better to understand the situation fully, ask them questions, have them thinking about the implications of what they might be pushing for, and what the implications might be on their peer, the peer parts of the organization. And I find it very valuable to step back and ask the probing questions to try to understand more about what's this issue, what's the situation, might have a profound impact on the business, but to make sure you're asking probing questions to get more information on the table, to get that person thinking about the other functional groups and the impact might be on them, and encouraging over time, that's encouraging them to be thinking more broadly about what's the bigger goal for the organization, and how do they make their decisions and interact with their peer leaders to make the decisions that's meeting the long-term goals of the company. And in that way, the leader, the CEO or the owner, is really building the organization to have more capability, to be able to delegate more. And frankly, I always found got to better decisions, more robust decisions, and more buy-in to executing on it well. So that communication, I think, sometimes I think it's good for the leader to resist, but to ask the questions, to get to develop the people underneath them, and in turn, it's likely they're going to behave that way with their staffs and their subordinates also down through the organization. So it's very powerful. But as everybody was talking, it helped reinforce for me in thinking about past situations that's incredibly powerful way to move an organization forward over good amounts of time. Over time, it does take hold and has a very big effect on success longer term.
And changing those experiences, right? It will then change the beliefs, right? And that's
Yes.
behavior that needs continuous reinforcement.
Mhm.
Marcia.
Hey, yeah, so I really loved the presentation. Thank you. It was great. One of the things that I thought about while you were presenting was perception is not reality until it becomes reality. And as humans, you know, we are designed to be self-biased. It's part of the animal side of us to look out for ourselves, for self-preservation. And the other thing was that there are three sides to everything. I remember my dad always saying there was two sides to everything, but as I got older, I realized no, there's three sides to everything. There's what I think, what you think, and what the reality is. And that in business, we find ourselves continually struggling and fighting against perception within the team dynamic. And the thing that creates the bridge of taking perception to reality, which is where we all have to be as a team successful, what creates that bridge is the communication. And that's what I really got a lot from your presentation. So thank you.
Yeah, I'll add something to that, just to say that when you're looking for alignment, to Marcia's point, actually, it's really important to get alignment on what has happened as well as on what should happen. Because if you're sitting down and you're trying to all agree what should happen, but then when you dig into it, you realize that there's actually disagreement on what has happened in the past. And I think there's some famous person who said, if we can't agree on history, how can we agree on what we should do in the future? And so that sometimes I think teams forget that when they're doing business planning, that I always encourage people to start off with a kind of the story of how we got to where we are today. Everyone needs to agree that. Everyone needs to agree that this is how we got to where we are today. And then from that basis, you can begin to talk about how to make things better or fix it or whatever.
Yeah, etch the reality in everybody's brain, right? This is the agreed upon reality, and that way we can move forward.
That's that third thing that Marcia was talking about, which is what actually happened has got to be agreed between the two parties.
Thank you, Eddie. Okay, so I think, Tricia, in the interest, I know that you're always interested in starting on time and ending on time. And so I'll just wrap it up with just a repeat, right? The vision, a vision without execution, a vision without action is simply a hallucination. So as we go into the end of the year, remove that hallucination, make things clear, get your teams on the bus. Your teams are not limited to those people who sit around you and are direct employees, right? Your teams are your referral networks. They are your suppliers. They're your customers. Get your customers on board with the vision, share that vision, show that vision, who you are being, who your company is being, who your brand is being, that you're living it. You're leading by example. Your customers see it. Your clients see it. Your non-customers see it. And so that vision, coupled with execution, coupled with action, is going to drive a completely different set of results. And it goes from hallucination to reality. I'll end with that and turn it back over to you, Tricia.
All right. Thank you. That was excellent. What a great discussion today. And, you know, the big question today was, who are you being? Who are you being to yourself? Who are you being to your clients? And who are you being to your team? Who are you being to the people around you? I love that. All right. So, Greg, do you have an aha moment takeaway from today?
Yeah, I need to explain how the business, like for me in my particular case right now, as we're communicating how we're going to, who's going to be doing what and how we're handling it, is I need to communicate some more of how I really have gotten here in the last 5 years and where I am expecting things to go, and make sure that we have that common buy-in and where we want to see the business go from here forward, and how we plan to execute that, and it be a two-pronged approach and just not how I think it should go.
It's the control factor, right? That's what happens in our businesses.
It's very much the control factor.
Yeah. Absolutely. Great. Thanks for sharing that. Cortland, how about you? What's your big takeaway today?
Redoing my presentation on effective communication altogether.
Oh, well, Cortland, if you need help, there are a dozen other people here that would be willing to help you. So just reach out.
Awesome. I appreciate you guys so much. I really do.
Yeah, you bet. All right. In the essence of time, because we only have about 3 minutes left, is there a coach on the call that had an aha moment that they would like to share?
I see.
Don't steal the swag and don't beat up the Corvette.
That's right.
I like it, Sean. Austin, go ahead.
Yeah, this one's for Eddie. Eddie, where'd you get that quote from? If we can't agree on the history, how do we move forward? Because I mean, I'm struggling with something on a personal level, and that's exactly spot on.
Okay, well, I can Google it, but so can you.
I did. I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the author. So maybe you'll have better luck.
My aha moment was you should have siphoned the gas.
I think Eddie Ross said that quote, didn't he?
That's right, Dave. All right. Anybody else have a last minute aha? Got 2 minutes left.
Well, I want to thank Cortland for being open, transparent, and saying that based on our conversation here today, he thinks that maybe there's a better way to share and communicate his thesis on communication. Because again, as I told you with this client, I just did some work for. I mean, I kind of feel kind of pleased that I pushed him on this whole communication piece because he just wasn't feeling it for whatever reason. But Cortland, what you just shared, I mean, I appreciate you sharing that, because that's giving me a little confidence that yeah, this is indeed a big deal. Thanks.
All right. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you to all of the veterans that we have on our call today for your service, and for those of you who may be military brats or spouses, because they are important. What do we call it, Dennis? Military connected. We got schooled last night.
Military connected.
Military connected. They are not patriots. So those of you who are military connected, thank you for your service. If you have not reached out to someone that you know that is a veteran or is a spouse or a sibling or anyone that you know in your Champions Network, I suggest that you have a conversation with them. So it's a great way to break the ice. You guys have an amazing day, and we'll see you next month.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Enjoy this as
it.
always.
Bye-bye.
Take care.